My name is Nikola Milutinovic. I am a software architect at Levi 9, and I will give you a short talk about security in microservices. So, when we are talking about microservices, what are the major concerns that we should have when dealing with security? Well, you can see on the slide we have 3 microservices talking to backend systems and a whole host of different clients. So the first thing that we should be aware of is we're dealing with multiple targets that we need to secure. When I say multiple targets, I don't mean only several microservices, but they can have several instances, they can be clustered, etc., etc. Second thing that we need to be aware of is that we will be dealing with chained requests. With microservice architecture, we are decomposing our system. So one microservice is usually expected to talk to the next microservice in order to fulfill the requests. And of course, you might run into a requirement like we had for our current client that all requests made to all microservices need to be authenticated. One of the things that you also need to keep in mind is that credentials, that's how user proves who he is, that they must be kept safe. So with all this in mind, what is the security service or architecture that is most preferable? That is, in my opinion, token-based single sign-on systems. With those, you're dealing with a client. You also have a token server, and you have a whole host of services running behind the scenes. And the first thing that the client will do is contact authorization server to get the token. There, the client will perform authentication and all that's needed. And from that moment on, the requests made by the client to the services, in our case microservices, will be accompanied by the token, and that token will be the authentication. So, considering that microservices usually employ REST API, and REST is HTTP based, what are some of the standard token-based single sign-on systems? Historically, the first to show up was SAML, which is now in version 2.0. SAML is older. It uses XML as the format of its messages. The second one that appeared later was OAuth2, and it's very popular these days, supported by many of the identity providers. OAuth2 is using for tokens unique strings, and practically that means usually some sort of UUID schema. And the last one to appear that I'm aware of is OpenID Connect, which builds on OAuth2 with certain changes, and one of them is that for tokens they are using what is known today as JWT. JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens, and I will show you one. So the JSON Web Tokens, first of all, are self-contained, which means that all that you need to know about the user in order to perform your security decisions is contained in the token itself. JWTs can be signed cryptographically. They can be also encrypted. So in order to protect potentially sensitive data about the user, and they can be large. When I say large, this is what I mean. This is an example of a small JWT, and you will see just how small it actually is. It consists of 3 parts. The blue part here is the header. The green part is actually the payload of the token. In JWT terminology, it's called claims. And the last part, the red part here, that's the crypto signature of the first two. The first two parts are basically base 64 encoded JSON strings. And when we decode them, this is what we get. The header is containing mandatory type, saying that this is a JWT token, and the crypto algorithm used for signing and or encrypting the token. And the payload shown here contains certain properties. The most important property is this one. That is the timestamp when the token expires. So in this case, validating a token means checking the signature is okay and checking that the token has not expired. If those two conditions are met, this token is good and you can proceed. Then there are some fields like audience here, which are described by the standard. And the rest of these fields are basically proprietary, and they are meant for Spring Security that I was using in my demo. Scope that's related to OAuth2 scopes, authorities, that's Spring Security roles, client ID, and for instance, username, that's basically the username of the user that this token refers to. And since I've had problems connecting my laptop, we will not have a demo. So I will skip quickly to final words. What we can say about these tokens and using OAuth2 securities. First of all, if you're using plain OAuth2 and UUID, those tokens are small, but they need decoding. And if you're using JWTs, they are self-contained, so you don't need to decode them, but they can be large. The difference between UUID and JWT is something like a difference between calling a method by value and passing parameters by value and by reference. UUID is a reference, and you need to decode it. JWT is the whole value. And last but not the least, I have not said anything yet about authorization. These systems do not deal with authorization that much. And in my opinion, authorization should be locally done by the microservices themselves. Okay, so any questions? Looks like I've managed to confuse you. Either that or you've had a good lunch. Okay, guess nobody. Well, thank you for being here. And we will now get to the other speakers, I guess.